Hey guys, welcome. Hat Tuesday number 23. Hat Tuesday number 23. Last Hat Tuesday before my trip to Puerto Rico. Hopefully you guys won't miss me too much, or hopefully you do. I don't know how, how I should say that. But yeah, it should be fun. I'm excited. It draws ever closer. We got one of my main man, Robert. How you doing, Robert?
I'm well, thank you.
All right, good to see you, my friend. We got Nathan in the chat room. Hey, Nathan, how's it going? Hopefully, all is well. You're probably traveling again. It just seems like you're always on the road. So, hopefully, you have safe travels out there. Uh, Robert, how's the weather out by your way?
Uh, we the crocuses are popping up. Um, it's gonna hit in I it might hit 60 today. The sun is shining.
Wow.
My neighbor's golfing. Um, but the rain's coming in this afternoon, so it'll go back to its more normal gray and wet.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, we're only about 40 degrees over here. I think with that, I think the high was supposed to be like mid 40s. But compared to what we've gotten recently, that's actually pretty decent.
Yeah, yeah. We
So,
this will be this. I mean, we've still got a few weeks to go, but this could be the first winter in over 40 years where no snow.
wow.
Yeah, and we don't get a lot, but usually there's at least a couple of days of snow. But
Yeah,
this year, we're surrounded by mountains, ski hills,
yeah.
and and that usually runs well, into April, and they're hurting because you look up on
Yeah,
the mountains and there ain't no snow up there.
right. Right. Yeah, that's a precarious situation for that kind of that line of business.
Yeah,
Um yeah, Nathan's got 69 degrees. I'm a little jealous, but when I get to Puerto Rico, I mean, we'll see what it's like.
yeah, it
Yeah,
should be it should be lovely.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I haven't been on the island since I was 3 years old.
Oh
So this
wow,
is a long time coming.
yeah.
So
I was in Cuba, well, too many years ago now, but it was in March, and
yeah.
it was just perfect. It was um, in centigrade. It was mid. It was like 25. So what's that? That's kind of like high 70s, low 80s,
Yeah, that's perfect.
low humidity. It was lovely.
Yeah, Cuba's on my list as well. I've been to the Dominican Republic, so I'd love to touch all of the Caribbean. If that would be nice. That's on my bucket list.
Things are not good in Cuba right now.
Yeah, understood. Those are one of the unfortunate things. Given the political situation. Hopefully at some point things settle down and travel becomes available. I have friends that have made it to Cuba, when they could, and I've heard nothing but good things. So yeah, looking forward to that one day, hopefully.
I love I love music, baseball, cigars, and rum.
Yeah,
So
what's not to like, right?
what's
Cuba's
not
got
to
that.
like? It's like, and the people are amazing
Yeah,
in
yeah,
in spite of their hardships. It's like
yeah,
they
yeah.
they have a smile on their face, and they do the best they can, and it's just wonderful people.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think that's something that I hear so often, and it's one of those things where obviously, in the Caribbean, there's kind of a personality that kind of goes with the Caribbean, especially the men. It's kind of like you work, not because you're trying to get rich, you're just trying to get, support your family if you have one, support yourself, make sure you have enough to eat. But there's kind of a laid back attitude. My dad exemplifies that way to a very high degree, and it's one of those things where, you think about stereotypes and things like that, but somebody that comes from that culture, I can speak to that and say like there is that kind of that island mentality, and it's kind of like it's a mixed bag, right? It's like, you're sitting there and there's a little bit, it's almost liberating. I guarantee that some of my father's longevity, because he doesn't really have like a long lifespan on his side of the family, but I think his laid back attitude has been at least part of the contributor for him to getting to this age. He will have a birthday tomorrow, Lord willing. Yeah, wow. I think he'll be 87
Oh,
tomorrow.
wow.
I get that right. Yeah. Yeah. So Dad, like I said, you got to dance with the one that got you here, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But Robert, we have a great topic today. And I know I've shared this graphic, and I'm going to just try to, I know I shared it with the, with the inner circle here. And hopefully this doesn't come out too small, but I generated this with Chat GPT. Obviously there's going to be errors. Anytime you deal with Chat GPT, you're going to have like typos and things like that. And I just got tired of having Chat GPT correct all the typos. So I just left it as is, because the spirit of the document really still is exemplified. And for you guys at home, you guys can kind of pause this, and I'll try to share this out in a future post on Facebook. That way you guys can have a copy of it, because you guys know me. I come from a psych background. We deal with frameworks, and I just asked ChatGPT to kind of develop a little bit of a framework for all the reasons and all the ways to kind of classify modern hat wearers. And some of these were a little bit more obvious, and I learned on some of these that how kind of expansive this can be, this framework. And one thing I wanted to point out is that even though we tend to bucket ourselves into all of these categories, onto some of these categories, it doesn't mean that we're kind of just one type of hat wearer. Meaning, I think of these as kind of like facets on a spectrum, and you can have all of these. You can actually exemplify all of these, but maybe at different degrees. And the ones that we're higher on in terms of the spectrum, we'll probably classify ourselves as that kind of hat wearer. But it's interesting. Obviously, right away, that first one, creative and cultural influencers. Robert, what made you think, of the framework and of that category in particular?
I think it fits, and I think what you just said is quite apt. And it's like I guess it's like being a psych guy, that it, like in any typology,
yeah,
we're never all in one quadrant, and we dip our toes in all the other quadrants.
Correct.
Depending upon. And I think that's apt for this as well, because it's as I said to you earlier, with my customers, I deal with a certain demographic, and they're guys generally, rough terms, 50 years and older.
Yeah.
Not just working men. I don't have any wealthy clients or famous clients. They're just guys off the block that are they've been hat wearers, and they're treating themselves to a custom hat. It's kind of like, they've got a few extra bucks in their pocket, and they can afford it and justify it. But they're certainly not style mavens. That's
right.
Kind of the last thing. But there's also I had a good customer come up the other day, and he brought his straw hat in for repair.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about hats in general, and he says that he's retired, just retired. He's younger than I am, but him and his wife go out to the local pubs, and he's got a buddy, another customer of mine, and they never go out of the house without a hat.
Right.
And they were remarking, it doesn't matter where they go, but people always remark, "Oh, I love your hat. Oh, where'd you get your hat?" Oh,
yeah.
It's and they enjoy that, because it gives them kind of a a bit of stature.
Yeah.
But the other thing that goes along with that is often people will say, "Oh, I wish I could be a hat wearer."
Right.
But I can't wear a hat. They don't look good on me. I don't feel, it's like whatever reason they give, but it's like, so it's my theory that the delineation of, it's like there's either hat wearers or non-hat wearers,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of closet hat wearers out there, the people that would love to be a hat wearer, but
Yeah.
something is preventing them. They just can't, and it's like they can't see themselves,
Right.
but in their mind's eye, they'd love to be a hat wearer.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I don't know, I find it sad. It's sad.
Yeah, and that goes to show you the power of social norms, right? And it's really kind of one's perception of the social norms, right? Because a lot of these kind of perceptions come internally, and it's based on, well, maybe not a whole lot of data, kind of a lot of assumptions about how maybe others might perceive us if we wore a hat. And that's why I think it's such it's so great. Like, so right there, ChatGPT put creative and cultural influencers and style-driven wearers. And I think that for a lot of folks can be enough, right? If your favorite musician is wearing a hat, that could be enough to kind of make you at least try it out, right? Because sometimes that first step is the hardest step to take.
Yeah. I just flashed on one of the very few young guys I've had as a customer, and he's a guitar player,
Yeah.
and he brought in a picture of, and I can't remember the guy's name. He was
Yeah.
like a minor star, minor celebrity,
Yeah.
but the guy brought a picture in, and he says, "Could you make me a hat like this?" And
Yeah.
it was his very first hat, and and it was like, "Yeah, I can make you that hat." So it was like that was the inspiration. It's like
Yeah.
I want to look like that.
Yeah, yeah. And again, we know that a lot of musicians, right? I mean, obviously, I'm wearing a pork pie today. Lester Young was a famous
Oh yeah,
jazz saxophonist that wore a pork pie. And obviously, they are celebrities like Johnny Depp and Joe Pesci and a lot of actors that will go out. Maybe you don't see them sometimes in their role, right? Joe Pesci, I don't think there was that many roles where he wore a hat, but Joe Pesci, in terms of being out in a town, would wear a hat. Johnny Depp, very similar. And you see the confidence that these folks go out with, and you kind of know that they're major celebrities. And if that is enough to get you to try it out, I think those are really important. Like, it's really important to have those influencers. Very similarly, for those folks that aren't necessarily celebrities, but they're just people that are really into fashion and style, right? I talked about a couple of gentlemen, Robert and Fabio, on the Fedora Lounge. Those are gentlemen that dress up. They don't just wear a fine hat. They have a whole outfits. They have whole outfits. And you've seen them there, Robert, because you're on the Fedora Lounge as well. They're impeccably dressed. And you just want to have at least a little portion of that kind of style. Yeah, and Nathan says it well. He says, hat wearers breed other hat wearers. That's so correct. I mean, the theory of, like the reason action approach really talks about this idea of norms and perceived norms. And there's no secret as to why we hunt out other people like us, right? We try to find our tribe on Facebook, on Instagram, on the Fedora Lounge, because we want to be surrounded by other hat wearers, because every once in a while, it kind of like, if you're the only person in your vicinity that kind of wears a fine hat and appreciates them, you kind of want to have that reinforcement out there, and you also want to get new ideas for your new hat.
it's I was going to go back to something earlier about like what prevents us from being a hat wearer. What internal dialogue, and I went through a period. Like, I consider myself, I've been a hat wearer for a big chunk of my life.
Yeah.
But there was a time, probably from like certainly in my 30s and into my 40s, where I didn't wear hats at all.
Right.
And my internal dialogue was, my dad was a hat wearer.
Right.
He never left the house without a hat on his head, and I have I have pictures. I have one in my shop of like, because in all pictures he's wearing a hat, except for
Yeah.
I have his wedding picture up here, and he's not wearing a hat in that one. But the thought was, I felt I was too young,
Right.
and I hadn't earned the right to wear a hat. And when I put a hat on my head, it was as if a kid was wearing his father's hat, and
Right.
it just it it didn't fit my internal dialogue. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't until I got like into my 40s, past 45, that and I started to get gray hair,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, I think I might have reached the age where I've grown into it, and now
Right.
I can legitimately wear a hat and not look like a kid wearing his father's hat. But so there was
Right.
that gap of, at least 15, if not 20 years where it wasn't me.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a great insight, Robert, because I mentioned this probably in passing on a couple streams in the past, where there's kind of that right. Like I always talked about my influences, besides the fact that you had celebrities like Stallone, et cetera, and some of the other folks that I talked about, Frank Sinatra, but they're gentlemen in the neighborhood. They were older gentlemen that would wear these stingy brims. And then in my brain, I kind of connoted wearing a fine hat with age and wisdom, right? Because these were guys that they've had such life experience, right? And I think what you hit the nail on the head with was sometimes there's that reluctance. If you're a younger guy, of kind of maybe like imposter syndrome, right? You don't want to go out there in a hat because you're like, well, who am I? I'm 20 something years old or 30 something years old. I haven't lived enough to be able to earn the right to wear this hat. But I think it's nice to kind of see the juxtaposition in film, right? Well, we talked about when folks are trying to become, right? So maybe you're not very well experienced in life yet, but you do appreciate wisdom. Well, sometimes, right? Maybe wearing that hat could open the doors, right? And essentially you kind of like in many ways fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah, mock it up.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, remember, if you're gonna go out there, if you have that perception, maybe others have that perception, somebody else is probably gonna think of you as maybe a little bit wiser, right? And you'll get treated as a wiser person. It's kind of like it has like that kind of reinforcement cycle, right? Where people will treat you a certain way. I know tall guys get that a lot, right? Robert, you're a taller guy. When you're a taller guy, a lot of folks will treat you a lot differently. I mean, I talk to folks that are like 6'5", 6'6", and it's like, since I was a kid, everybody treated me like I was an adult, and then I behaved right. You kind of followed suit because everybody treated you with such respect because you were taller. I think the fedora has something very similar.
Yeah, could be. I was a big kid. I was probably I was almost 6 feet, I think, when I was 12.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of my teen years, I grew another inch, and that was it. But the upside was I went to work as a 12-year-old because I presented as much older. So
right.
No one bothered to ask me for ID. They made the assumption.
Yeah.
But the downside to that was the other guys that were older and a whole lot tougher than me, they didn't know I was just 12 years old either.
Yeah.
So I was kind of thrust into a milieu where I spent the first part of my teen years scared out of my wits.
Yeah.
I was in a milieu in which I really couldn't operate. I truly was faking it.
Yeah. And I'll tell you from experience, right? For not having worked at 12 years old, but being around older gentlemen, they would talk about women and topics that, right? They knew how old I was, but they would still talk about it because essentially they were kind of like, it was like, this kid's got to learn, right? Like maybe his dad's not teaching him. I'm going to give him his street education. So you learn a lot and you hear a lot of things that, well, maybe they're not things that you're supposed to hear at certain ages, but it's kind of like them welcoming you into the club. And You man, I got so many stories of stuff that I've heard well before I probably should have heard them. But it's these older guys, and just to sit there and you're like, yep, you got to learn sometime. You know, you're already 10 years old, kid. You know, it's time to go out there and start chasing some women. I'm like, man, you know, and Nathan asked such a great question here. Do younger people lack some confidence to wear a hat? I think I gotta say, you know, I'm gonna think yes. There is that again. There's when you're younger. Again, I'm just sometimes I consider myself young. Sometimes I don't consider myself young. But here, you know, approaching 50 years old, I'm gonna say yes because, well, one, depending on like not everybody's had the experience that Robert had working at 12 years old. I think having a job and earning a living, there's a certain degree of confidence that one gets from that, right? It doesn't mean that you don't feel imposter syndrome, but we're like little investigators. We collect evidence that we are, you know, people of value, right? Especially men, right? I mean, we know fedoras are there's a lot of men that are in this hobby, and we go out there, right? One is maybe getting that first car, getting that first paycheck, getting that first promotion, getting that first girlfriend, right? And we sometimes take for granted that not everybody achieves those markers at the same time, right? Some folks might get their first girlfriend when, you know, when they're like 10 or 11 years old, and other folks don't get their first girlfriend until they're 30. So you can see here that all of us, right? There's an idea of social comparison, right? We are natural comparison, compare and contrast folks. And when we see others, we try to go and try to benchmark ourselves against others, sometimes unfairly, right? Not everybody's the same. And I think confidence is a huge factor in one, the decision to even go and try something like wearing a fedora, and especially in going out in public and wearing one consistently.
Because it definitely will make you the center of attention to some degree.
Yes.
Right. If you walk into well, like we have a craft brewery just down the road from us. That's we call it our alternative living room.
Yeah.
And the other day, Elaine and I went down there for lunch, and we just ran out of the house, and I had a hat, but she didn't put a hat on her head. And the first thing Amanda, the bartender, looked at Elaine and says, "Where's your hat?" It's like, oh,
right.
I didn't. You're not wearing a hat. I didn't recognize you. But it's like very seldom do we walk into a place when we're wearing a hat, and it's like people look at us, you know, and it's like, I know they're not looking at me, they're looking at my hat.
Right.
Because it's like when Elaine and I walk into a space, we're the only people wearing a hat. And and it still is unusual. You know, it is attention gathering. So I can see, you know, I mean, we're really used to it now, but I can see some people being uncomfortable with that level of attention.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And we just had Paul and Nathan join us. Welcome, Paul and Nathan.
Hi, Robert. Good to see you.
Hello. Hey, how's everybody?
Doing well, doing well. I'm gonna let you guys chime in. You know, me and Robert have gotten the conversation going. I don't know if you gentlemen have kind of. I know Nathan was following along in the chat, but we were talking about this framework that I generated with ChatGPT. We started off with some of the celebrities and kind of just fashion and style people that we kind of see around us in terms of having an influence on our decision to even get into this hobby, and then reinforcing the decision to kind of go out there and wear a hat.
Could I just let me interject?
Sure. Go ahead, Robert.
And then, because I'd like your take on this, Paul. That when you look at the categories, I have my niche, as I said. It's, you know, it's like I do classic fedoras, some westerns, but generally my customers are 50 years and up, with maybe, I don't know, 10-15% women.
Right.
But I mean, the other hatters in my general area have carved out there's another fellow. He has a shop right in Vancouver proper, and he makes the festival style hats.
Right.
And so we cooperate in a sense because we don't compete. Like our markets are so entirely different. And then there's another hatter that I've actually have never met her,
Yeah.
and hers they're not festival hats, but she's in the film and theater industry. That's her milieu, and those are her customers. And she makes the not like Yobalo, but I'm not sure how to do, like they're a genre unto themselves, and the
Right.
only person that would wear that really is someone who's in the creative field, and
Yeah.
it's like so she has a totally different market than the two of us, and then there's
Yeah.
another fellow over on Vancouver Island who has carved out a great business, and he makes purely Western hats, primarily for working cowboys.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we don't it's the wonder of the internet because we don't have any cowboys up here.
Right.
So it's like, so we have four hatters with entirely different marketplaces, and they occupy a different space on your chart.
Right.
So I'll shut up.
I think
No, that was great.
that was
insight.
really interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. When I started out a couple of years back now, I looked at the market and looked to see where there was an opportunity, and what I couldn't really see was the sort of higher crown 1930s, 1940s style hat. So I've sort of gone into that area, but also similar to yourself, Robert. A lot of my customers are between 50 and 70 years old. I mean, today onto a gentleman, it was 67. Yesterday, I saw four customers. I think the youngest was 32, and he's a gentleman that his wife's allowed in one hat, and he's going for a 100% beaver festival hat.
Yeah.
I've started to do the festival design hats, but because people have been asking for it, and I think that's driving my age down. Although in saying that, I've got gentlemen in their 60s and
Yeah.
actually later that are asking for the festival hat, which is, I think it's great. I mean, I really like the idea of them, wearing denim jeans, a t-shirt, and a festival hat, and
Yeah.
cracking on down the beach or whatever. But I think I don't consider myself as competing with other of the main independent hatters that I know of. So I wouldn't suggest that I know all of them here in the UK, but certainly the ones that have got websites and I've seeked out and I've connected with on LinkedIn or whatever, we all seem to do slightly different hats in a slightly different market.
Right.
But I think really it's I don't know that I've really found. I think you've probably got to go 3 or 4 years before you find your area in the marketplace, and I still feel that I'm sort of finding my way. I mean, Western hats have become a bit of a thing for me now, so that's all sort of coming on board, and so I mean, my wife's told me I'm not allowed to get any cowboy boots. I mean, what can I say?
My dirty little secret is I have more footwear than my wife does.
Ooh, wow. Wow.
by about a factor of 3.
I think
So
us men do
it's not
do
even
that.
close.
Yeah. But no, this, by the way, I really, really like this this illustration that was put together by yourself on ChatGPT. Really, really good. I'm with Nathan. I really honestly think that you should get this printed and perhaps sell a few, because I'd certainly have one up in the study here in the workroom, and I'm sure a few of our other hatters would. It's just a nice thing, and you don't really find many posters that are this sort of thing, and graphically it looks pretty good.
Well, yeah, ChatGPT, and again, there are little errors. ChatGPT always, when I ask it to create some kind of graphic, will always have little errors. And it takes me some iterations to try to get the errors down. And for this one, I just went with the first one. So you'll notice some of them, but I'll try to clean it up and I'll share it on Facebook, and that way folks can download them. I don't know what the resolution is on these. But I agree, they do look really well. Like I do it so that it can kind of guide the discussion without me having to show too many images. And you guys already know I'm a big fan of frameworks. And as I mentioned earlier, the nice thing about these frameworks is that one, not everybody can be part of all these different categories, right? We're all kind of on several of these categories in various forms, like on a spectrum, right? We're not just one type of hat wearer, or most times, but it gives you at least a framework so that you can kind of see where you're at. And for those that we're higher up on some of these categories, it gives us a nice little typology, or at least, just like I said, maybe not typology, but framework to kind of say, hey, this is where I fall. And then for hatters, you guys can use this also to see where your customer base falls. And who knows, maybe can help you guide some of your inventory and see how this could work for you.
Yeah, it's a great graphic. I think if I could print it and get like a maybe 11 by 14 frame, and it would just make a good decoration. But I look around and I agree with much of what's been said. I mean, when I look around at who wears hats, at least in my region, I'm in the Carolinas, so it is echoing what's been said. It is kind of an older crowd that does that.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, like, I start out with ball caps and kind of going back to the social norms. Like if you're in that era or where you grow up or what you're around, ball caps were pretty popular. And then it got into my profession where I had to wear a hat, a hair restraint.
Yeah.
And then for me, wearing I'll call them grown up hats, to kind of get out of the ball cap. It started for me functional, like what was the practical application of, keeping the sun out of my eyes and off my skin, or keeping my head warm in the colder months. But then it kind of progresses to, okay, well, this item is very practical. By the way, let me get one that looks good, because I'm not having to look at it. The ones around me are. So, and I agree with what you said with the graphic here, because sometimes you might fit in different categories depending on what the scenario is, what the climate is, what the situation is, where you're at. But it's a great graphic. But it kind of goes back to our conversation we had earlier on how we create more hat wearers, because I think it is kind of an older crowd, and I'm at an age now, I don't really care what people think that are around me, because I mean, I go into retail stores and I'm thinking to myself, man, how do these people go into this store dressed like that? So, and they're not embarrassed. So I'm like, you know what? I don't even care, because I'm comfortable and I like what I'm wearing and what I look like, and go about my day.
Yeah, it's like the subtle art of not giving an F, right? The famous book. And it's one of those things we talked about, the idea of, right? Obviously, younger folks, they don't have that life experience to kind of have that to draw upon for that confidence, which makes it, like I said, when you see folks like Morgan wearing a hat, you kind of admire those folks even more, because, well, at younger ages, sometimes you need to have these external sources, right? And maybe it's your family, maybe it's your friends, your friend network. It could be celebrities. We've talked about that early in the discussion. It's right up on the top there, because I feel like for a lot of folks, a famous actor, a famous musician, somebody that wears a hat and does so with confidence, and you see obviously it's a successful person, that will be enough to at least get you in the door. And like what Nathan was alluding to, is that sometimes you start off, right? Like obviously I started off as a stingy brim kind of guy. I evolved into getting some more of those wider brims, because one, it's also, besides it looks good, right? Even though you didn't think it looked good, I've gotten feedback that it looks good, and also it's functional, right? A wider brim gives you a little bit more sun protection. So all of a sudden now I have more reasons. I had my initial reasons, and then I have my current reasons for wearing a hat, and that will impact where I fall on this framework.
Yeah, I mean, is the I hear about the Western. Paul says it's a lot more Western, and Robert has made some Westerns. And I know like Yellowstone, other Western, the Western genre in the film industry has kind of caught on recently. Just the fad that kind of flips around. That's so true too, because in entertainment, do you guys think that this little Western boom has anything to do with some of the entertainment that's popular right now?
I definitely think so.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the biggest Western shop in Europe yesterday. It just happens to be about 30 miles from here.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting because they were saying that they're expecting the biggest Western music event this March. It's going to be absolutely huge in a place called the O2, which is a very, very big venue in central London. What was interesting is that people are really spending quite a significant amount of money on looking, the Western genre. And but what was also interesting is they showed me the Stetson 6X open road, for instance. It's £540, which is in dollars at the moment. I guess that's about $700 or $800. And I just said to them, I showed them this one that I'd made, and this is just a rabbit fur felt, but their rabbit fur felts are £550.
Wow.
And I just figured, this is something I'd sell for probably $225, which is what, $275, maybe $300 at the most.
Robert, Paul, you keep showing me hats that I want to buy.
You keep them coming, Nathan.
Oh man, look, this is so nice. So tell us about this hat here. Oh
so
man,
this is obviously a cattleman crease. It's a 210 gram weight. FEPSA, 100% rabbit fur felt. So I've actually bought this from America. I had it imported, and it's just lovely. American sweatband. It's just a terrific.
Now, how big is the brim on that? How big is the brim?
Oh, hang on, let's have a look. I want to say 4 inches, Nathan, but let me just measure. Yeah, 4 inches.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
4 inches. It's just. I've got more of the blue felt also, Nathan. So
Oh my gosh!
Right. I love that. Like I said, Nathan, it sounds like a solution in search of a problem here.
I don't know. Paul knows the right strings to pull. That's for sure.
Oh, the interesting factor I was really trying to make, I guess, was that the pricing where you are and the pricing here is all over the place. And in fact, from one part of the country here to another, pricing seems to be all over the place. So it's quite a difficult thing to get into a marketplace that hasn't really established itself as what is something worth, which is an interesting factor, I'll say right now. Yeah.
I had an email exchange with his name escapes me, the Sierra and South hatter.
Yeah.
And he was down at the Pitti Uomo in Florence.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was questioning him about the popularity of Western hats, and he said yes in the UK, and he noticed also at the Pitti Uomo that there was certainly a lot more examples of Western influenced hatwear there, but he didn't mention Yellowstone or any of the offshoots from that, but he did talk about the popularity of Western music. He said it's ascendant in the UK, and his take was that it was kind of dragging the hats up with them.
Yeah.
And I asked him if it was I'm old, so the modern country and Western music really doesn't appeal to me. It's really just Western flavored pop music. So I asked him, I said, is it like perhaps old school country and Western music? And he said, no. It was definitely the poppy stuff. But he said it's in his view, and on his Instagram page, I think in the last couple of months, everything that he's shown has been Western tinged. He's making a lot of open roads, and that seems to be a core of his business.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I almost feel like the market is upside down, where you've got it seems like the mainstream hats that you would buy would be at a price point, and then if you went custom, the price would just be astronomical.
Yeah.
But I almost think it's the other way around, where you're these name brands that obviously become marketing machines at some point,
Right.
or have these really high end prices for really subpar quality.
Right.
But if you go custom, the value is so much greater on that in that market. Am I wrong in saying that?
I don't think so. I mean,
I
gentlemen.
don't get me started on Stetson.
Yeah. I think you're right, Nathan. I think that if you can talk to the person that's going to make your hat, and if you can afford the time, and I'm lucky enough to be able to give people time to go through, the different weights, all the different information about the hats.
Yeah.
They appreciate it so much as they seem to come back and buy more. And I think that's really the thing, is that as a hatter, you have to decide what sort of felts are you going to buy. You're going to and how are you going to show value. And when myself, I don't have an established brand. I'm building it, yes, but it'll take many years. But what I want to make sure is that the quality of the materials I use is as good as I can find at a reasonable price. I mean, clearly, I'm not using chinchilla or anything silly like that. It's just middle to lower upper, I guess. And that way, when people get it, they get the wow factor. And it's all about extending the buying experience from just going into a shop, taking a hat off the shelf and putting it on and walking out with it, to actually this sort of width, bandwidth, if you like, of starting to tell the story, getting to know the client getting to know you, the client deciding on what sort of material they want and what color, etc., and trim, and then coming up with that marvelous end result for them. And then when it arrives, it's got all the instructions, a thank you note, and all the niceties, if you like, that you don't get in the retail situation. So I think it's great value for money working with a custom maker.
Yeah, I actually had a family member reach out when I posted. I guess it was yesterday. I posted this Carmen Sandiego in this Carmen Sandiego fedora, and he said, I want one of these, but in white. And I mentioned, I'm like, well, that's where somebody, like, I had to go and say, you probably want to go the custom route, right? I mean, vintage, you're not going to find, these kind of hats, in these louder colors. And that's when getting with a nice custom maker. This is a D-Bar J, who's over in Las Vegas, I believe, Las Vegas, Nevada. And but obviously we have Paul and Robert and all the various hatters that we have associated here that can make these in your desired color. And that's when I definitely would recommend custom, because, well, the vintage route, I mean, you might get lucky every once in a while and find, a kind of more of a loud hat, but in general, you're going to find the traditional colors.
I think what I took yesterday, when I walked into the Western shop, and I had probably about 8 or 9 different hats with me, but when I brought out this light blue one, there was nothing like it in the shop of the color. There was the shape, obviously, that cattleman shape, brims and stuff, crowns and things, but they just went, wow, that is wow. And then when they felt it, it was, oh, that's next level, and that wasn't prompted. It was just literally compared to what they had. And when they got the 6X out from Stetson, well, I'm not going to get you on Stetson, Robert, but when they got the 6X out from Stetson and they felt it, they I didn't need to really say anything more.
Yeah.
And the thing that you're, I don't know, I would venture that, I don't know, 90% of retail customers are not cognizant of the differences between an off the rack Stetson and a well-made custom hat.
Right.
To their eye, it's a hat.
Yeah.
And if it's in the color that they want, and if it's the style they want, then they'll buy it. But they don't realize that with Stetson, for instance, I have a few Stetsons. I have one from their 150th anniversary. It's 100% beaver fedora. The felt is wonderful, and they trimmed it with cheap polyester ribbon on the brim binding and the crown. And I bought the hat. Well, actually, Brent gifted it to me because the leather sweat was rotted
Right.
in like 5 years.
That's amazing. Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
and this hat in 2015 was $350 retail.
Yeah.
And then the sewing on the hat, like, on the crown ribbon, it was I'm sure it was machined. It was like those gross tack stitches that you can see from across the room.
Yeah.
You know, like the fit and the finish on the hat was terrible.
Right.
And yet they were charging $350 for it. And it was kind of their it was their flagship at the time because it was their 150th anniversary, you know,
Right.
and they're producing this crap product and people are buying it. And they, you know, they don't realize.
Right.
And when I started, it's like before the price of beaver went up, it's like I would gladly sell a beaver hat for $350 and have vintage ribbon, vintage Japanese silk liner. You know, it's like and the best roan leather sweat you can buy.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not even comparing apples to apples. But people walking into the store, they're willing to pay that for Stetson, for the brand.
Hey guys, I'm gonna jump off. I don't want to stifle the conversation, so keep it coming. It's a good show. I'll see you guys later.
Sounds
Take
good.
care.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan.
Have a great one.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, you know, again, everybody kind of comes at this from a different standpoint. Obviously, my journey was from vintage to getting some of the custom. And the nice thing is, all of a sudden you start noticing features, and you know you don't know what you don't know, right? And you start seeing the various, right? If you're coming at it from the vintage, you start noticing, wow, this particular example has a great sweatband. And then you notice the other examples that don't have a great sweatband. All of a sudden you're like, okay, you start compiling these like must-haves, right? Like for me, I try to seek out a brown sweatband because I don't know, there's just something about a brown sweatband for me that does it for me. So I try to, I use it as a way to kind of say, all right, I'm not going to acquire that hat anymore. It doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. And it opens the doors to working with a custom hatter such as Paul and Robert and all the various folks that we have here that create hats. And then you already know what you want. And anything that you don't know, well, then you have your hatter to kind of fill in the gaps to give you that guidance and get you the best possible hat for your money.
Yeah. The other interesting thing around price points is that when you get into the custom market, like even their pricing is wild variances.
Correct.
And it's like when I started, I decided that like who did I want to make hats for, and like where did I fit into the marketplace?
Yeah.
And so the conscious decision I made was I was going to provide a custom made hat with the finest in trimmings available, and do my best to price it at or just maybe slightly above an off the shelf Stetson.
Right.
And back then when I first started, the price of felts hadn't gone crazy, and it was easier to do.
Right.
It's harder to do today, but my price point was really an integral part of my marketing strategy, because I wanted to be able to sell a hat to the guy on the block. And
correct.
So when you look at it, when you look in the custom market, I guess Optimo in Chicago is like they're the top of the food chain at $2,000 US for one of their hats.
Yeah.
It's on my list to buy one, but I have to go to Chicago because I want to do it in person. I want to have the full experience. So if I'm going to drop $2,000 on a hat, I want to get the full meal deal. But I am really intrigued to see just what you get for $2,000. I know Brent has picked up a number of them on the resale market, and he's not overly impressed.
Okay.
It's like,
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a nice hat.
Yeah.
Is it a $2,000 hat? And I guess it's much
Right.
the same in the festival hat market, where you look at a Nick Fouquet, and it's like, is a Nick Fouquet hat worth $2,000?
Right.
Yeah, it's the design, isn't it, and the flair and the passion and all the brand. It's you're buying the lifestyle that he's created in his marketing, aren't you?
Correct.
But I'm with you. I'd much rather do the research into the style of hat that I want and find somebody that can make me a good quality hat that is outside of all of this facade, if you like, that's put together on the marketing side to sell that image to me. Because I mean, $2,000 for a hat is an awful lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah. And Steve Heck, who's been on the channel, shout out to Steve. Steve is really good friends with Mr. Thompson over at Optimo. And one of the interesting things in talking with Steve is, obviously Steve has been on the show and he's talked about his love of the real Ector velour hats. That's something that Mr. Thompson has expressed an interest in trying to revive. And even though Steve is very skeptical of the ability to do that, but just the fact that he wanted to do that shows you, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, obviously, we were in London. I got to hold a 30,000 pound straw hat that I will never ever purchase. But the fact that there are customers that are able to do that, and then if Mr. Thompson's able to take that windfall in selling those hats and then turn it into bringing back a style of hat that otherwise wouldn't be done, I love it, because it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, I got to think that some of that stuff just gets back into the market, and then somehow the consumer benefits from some of that, because it's a lot of it is the brand, right? Like brands have a value, right? Lock & Co, Stetson, obviously in the cars, you got your Porsches and your Lamborghinis. We know that when you compare performance to performance, there's going to be those that are higher value, but in the end, they're also that brand part of the equation, and it has value as well.
Do you remember when we were in London, we went to the Stetson shop, didn't we, in Neal Street? And what we did see in there was probably 3/4 of the stock was in a wool material rather than in a rabbit or any better felt. And most of their hats are actually made in Germany and brought under license and brought into the UK. Yeah. So in many ways, you have to ask the question, are the UK consumers being offered real Stetson hats?
Right.
I don't know whether it's designs that have been designed in America and shipped to, or whether they are anglicized or Europeanized, if you like, for the market. But I sort of feel it's a bit of a shame, to be honest. I'd like to be able to go in the Stetson shop knowing that there's going to be a whole range of American Stetsons in there for me to choose from. And there really wasn't a whole range. There were some, but not a whole range.
Agreed. And it's one of those things where I'm like, you don't know until you see the difference, and those folks that have had the opportunity to kind of test out and do a side-by-side comparison, they'll know the best. And, I guess that's the nice thing about the internet and about finding your tribe on Facebook and in the Fedora Lounge and Instagram, is that those folks that do have hands-on experience, they can kind of testify as to the differences in quality. And in that way, the consumer, if you're out there and you're going out there and consuming and doing some of that background research, you can go ahead and make that decision. And ultimately, the way I view it, and obviously this is kind of a lofty view, is that if enough people care, then the brands will have to kind of, cater to what the market wants, right? If they don't sell enough of them, they're going to have to figure out a way to get the best possible product in the hands of the consumer, because they'll have other options. I mean, that's, again, a little bit lofty expectations, but sometimes it does happen. And it's nice to see when you see a brand kind of respond to the needs of the market and some of the feedback. And I love that. That's why I love the interacting with some of these folks like FETSA and Lock and Co on Facebook, because that tells me that they're really trying to figure out what other avenues are available to kind of heighten the brand even more.
I think it's interesting, the question regarding our hats becoming more popular. And it's like on the one hand, it's like anecdotally you could say, well, yeah, I think they are.
Yeah.
But when you look at what's actually happening in the marketplace, Christie's just shut down.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
and then just last thing is, like in Vancouver, we actually used to have 2 to 3. I can't remember if they were all open at the same time, but upwards of 3 like real hat shops run by hat people. The kind of the longest standing one, it's still there. The Granville Island hat shop was run by milliners, where you could actually take a hat in and get it repaired, and they sold varying. Christie's was their top of the line, and then they went down. They had some Canadian, some Biltmores, and then they sold the Kubras, and then there was another shop that's still there out in a small town out in the valley, half hour from me. It's kind of a little tourist oriented town. But both those hat shops now exist. They sell hats to tourists.
Right.
And it's low end straws, wool, like just the kind of impulse purchase that a tourist would make. It's like, oh, I need a hat.
Yeah.
And they don't sell, they don't even sell the Kubras anymore, because that's too pricey for their market. Wow. So it's like, so you could say, well, like if that's all our market can support is cheap tourist hats, then maybe hat wearing isn't becoming more popular. Right.
Yeah. And then you see it a lot of times. I mean, I'll tell you, and I obviously, as somebody that started getting into more of like the jacket side right, so becoming an official hat, thanks to the Fedora Lounge, that created kind of a little bit of a jacket addict. And I have to kind of curb that down. Those jackets are pretty expensive, but
they will do that.
Yeah, you start seeing the and I'll tell you, one of the things that I started doing is, I would go out there and I'll go, let's say, to a thrift store or any kind, and you start realizing, looking at where the stuff is made, right? Just to find something that was made in America, right? For whatever. I mean, I'm not going to get into the argument about whether that means that's better or not, but I immediately noticed the paucity, right? The scarcity of items that said made in America. And that just made me want to search out more garments that said made in America, again, regardless of what you think that it means is better quality or not. Because again, it's like that rarity. And it's nice because you start developing, you start having an eye for more details that otherwise you would have, you would have never even like considered it. It's one of those things where the discussion in terms of all this is inherent, is that this is all process. You know what I mean? This hat wearing journey, it's just that, it's a journey. And just like life, you start collecting little bits of experience. You start interacting with other folks, right? It's like, I'm a big believer in terms of like, you are who you hang out with, right? And we hang out with each other and we influence each other in so many ways, probably more than we even realize. And it's such a good thing because it really does kind of make this a lot more fun, right? You start figuring out, okay, I'm a hat wearer, but I don't own a boater, right? And then you get yourself a boater hat, or you get yourself a Panama, and you start kind of broadening your horizons, and that just makes it again, it's fun. That's what it's all should be about, fun. I demand it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Don't take yourself too seriously when you're wearing it out either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the pork pie, like I said, a lot of folks they wear a pork pie. For me, like Heisenberg, right? Breaking Bad, I love that show. Bryan Cranston as Heisenberg, and watching his evolution throughout that show. Again, regardless of what you feel about the show, but I got to think that a lot of folks went and they see the pork pie now, and all they think of is Heisenberg. Breaking Bad. Obviously Buster Keaton would be one. Lester Young. We talked about all the various folks that have donned the pork pie hat. But these are the little things that we experience over time, and again, it becomes kind of a reciprocal process. I just love it. I just think it's cool.
The one interesting thing for me is when I first, very early on, after launching my brand and the local newspaper, I reached out to them and they did a feature on me.
Yeah.
It was back in the days when the local newspaper actually got delivered twice a week to doorstops.
Yeah.
That ended, I think, 3 years ago now. But anyways, all of a sudden, because up until that point, all my sales were internet based. And then all of a sudden, all of these local people started to contact me. And it was, the interesting thing is that there's hat people out there, because all of a sudden these hat people that, I mean, we never would have found each other. Right. But when they read the article, it was like, oh my God, there's a hat maker just up the street from me.
Yeah.
And these guys started to come out of the woodwork, and it was fun because they'd come to the shop and we talk, or they'd say, well, I got this hat that doesn't quite fit me, or it's somebody sat on it, and it's like, bring it on up, so they'd bring the hat up, and I'd put it back into shape. And it was so it not so much now, because I've kind of saturated that market, but for a while it was like, this was the Hatters Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun because guys would come and hang out, and there's one guy that still he still comes around. He's actually coming tomorrow. I've given him free reign in the shop, so he'll buy a felt from me, and then he'll come in and he'll make a hat in the shop.
Yeah.
And he's actually, the last time he was up, he broached the subject about when I think about retiring, he'd like to look into buying my operation. Awesome. So it's like, so for the first time, it's like, I can contemplate an out.
Yeah.
But he was going back to what you said earlier, he was influenced by Johnny Depp. That's his style model. And so when he was the first guy to take my hat making class, because he had to make himself a hat like Johnny Depp's. And he did. He was just absolutely thrilled.
Yeah.
So it's interesting seeing that there are hat people out there, but unless you bump into them, at the pub or whatever, it's like,
how would you find them? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big world, and there's not very many of us out there.
Yeah, and I just love that story, Robert, because it enhances like the idea of community, right? And Paul obviously also talked about mentoring and having essentially kind of I guess apprentices would be the proper term. But these are things, and again, it doesn't have to be a formal kind of mentor-mentee relationship, but these things where you welcome folks into your into your space, into your life. And all of a sudden, you enrich their lives, they enrich yours, and that's a kind of a way of paying it forward, right? And they will go out there, and they'll probably it's like one of those, again, we've talked about that idea of paying it forward and putting that energy out there. It pays off. Sometimes we don't always see it, but it's happening, and you got to love that, because you never know how much that little drop, that little ripple will create. What kind of waves.
Over in the UK, we have on a local level, we have a thing called Man Shed. And Man Shed is where men of a retired age get together. Oh. And they, Robert's obviously heard about it. Yeah.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
They use their tools and their skills from perhaps their life. They might have been on their tools, so they might have been an engineer or designer or whatever, but they make things, and they make things to give out to people in the community, but and also for themselves, of course. But the main thing really is that the men get together, put the worlds to rights, have a cup of coffee, piece of cake, or whatever, and spend a couple of hours together once or twice a week. And I, one of the things that I'm really trying to want to do is we're going off next Friday to have a look at some more houses in the West Country of England here, and see if we can find one that we want. And I want to build a big cabin in the garden with a patio out the front, tables and chairs, and I want a sort of man shed approach to hatting, so that the old boys locally, old boys my age really, can come round, and we can sort of sit there and make a hat, talk hats, and have a coffee, and it just to enjoy each other's company, as well as the hat thing,
That's right.
And of course it's nice to be able to have somewhere bigger to be able to film, to be able to mentor and help other people, because that's the thing that not worries me, but I would think is such a shame, is that the likes of Robert and myself, we get to a certain age and we have to give up because of our hands or our health or whatever, and we've got nobody to hand it over to. It's really nice to hear that there's a possibility there, Robert, because at the moment I'm talking with my son. He's not really that bothered about it, but unless I work at this thing and get people interested, I'm just going to fold, and that's maybe 10 years or more down the line, but we'll see. But interesting story that I don't know whether I'm allowed to share, but anyway, I will share it.
You're always allowed. I mean, obviously, you're always pretty appropriate, Paul. So there's very few things I'd be worried about.
I was at this cowboy shop yesterday, and apparently Beyonce flew into the UK in her private jet, and she had some hair pieces put in, and her cowboy hat for the show didn't actually fit. So they sent out one of her runners to the cowboy shop that I was at yesterday, and they bought a size 65 cowboy hat, Western hat for her, and it fitted to put on top of her hairpiece. So it saved the day. But you're quite right. It's very, very important for these celebrities to have a certain style to go with their music, and the continuity of that is very important. And clearly, somebody somewhere didn't think about the wardrobe situation of putting hair pieces in, and then the current hat that she's got not actually fitting.
Yeah, that's a great.
I'm amazed that they had a 65 on the shelf.
So was I. I was like, hang on a second, I've only ever made a 63, and that's only used recently. And they said, oh no, my husband's a size 63. I thought, blimey, I want to eat him on a dark night. But size 63 is big enough. But she said, no, we actually stock up to a size 65. And I thought, wow,
that's amazing. I had
I love that.
Probably one of my favorite experiences was making a hat for a gentleman. He was well into his 60s, and he was still working. He was like a security guard or a concierge, so not a wealthy man at all. And he came in to get a custom fedora made because all his life, his father always wore a fedora, and all his life, the son wanted a hat like his dad's, but he has a size 64 head. Wow. And he said, I could never find anything off the shelf to fit. He said, so my whole life I've been reduced to wearing baseball hats, because he says that's the only thing I could find that fit. And so I made him a hat, and he came back a couple of months later in my shop, and I have a mirror on the back wall, and he put the hat on, and he went over to the mirror, and he looked in the mirror, and tears started to stream down his face because he said, finally, I have a nice hat. And it's like, because none of the tourist shops are going to stock a 64. They probably don't even stock a 63.
No. It's funny with the custom hat market. I'm probably a bit like yourself, Robert. I'm hearing there's always a story behind the customer and the reason for them wanting the hat, and it's so nice when they share it with you. And I think two of the customers I was with yesterday, I was probably with them for half an hour, 45 minutes each, and they most of the time they were just telling me the story behind why they wanted this fedora and so on, and it was lovely. And I think we feel honoured in many ways that people feel that they're able to talk to us. It's almost like being a therapist. I know it sounds ridiculous, but do you know what I mean? It's like weird.
Yeah. And I that's a like an ancillary benefit of, because going back to what we talked about earlier is my wife and I wearing hats. Like it's a genuine conversation starter, because people will say, nice hat, or where'd you get the hat, and my wife is my biggest promoter, and she always says he makes them, which opens up a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
And people will express an interest, and it's like, well, I give them my card. It's like, come up to the shop. It's like, I won't try to sell you a hat, but if you're interested, come up to the shop. I'll pour you a cup of coffee, and we'll sit around, and we'll talk about it. We'll explore it. And it's like, I don't need your business. I don't need to sell you a hat.
Right.
But if you want to buy one, or if you want to just talk about it and explore it, come on up.
Yeah.
And and some people do, but not enough of them.
No. And I think what you've hit on is something really quite important in the UK as well, is that if you're a hatter that's trying to make a living out of hats, I think the pressure is on you to get sales. And I've taken the negative sell approach that you've just explained there, Robert, and said to people, look, it really doesn't affect my lifestyle or anything from whether I sell a hat or not. What does affect me is being able to find you and build you a lovely hat that you're happy with. And, if I can earn some money from it, that money just goes back in buying more founts or buying more, more ribbon or whatever accessories or equipment, And I said, look, maybe there'll come a point when I give up my other work that I do, and it will become more of a money spinner for me. But I don't think I really need it. It's a nice thing to have, but it's I think that helps a great deal. People don't feel so pressurized then.
Yeah,
I agree. And I think it's a lovely, the idea of calling it out to say, hey, don't worry, you're not going to get because we deal with salesmen, and sometimes the door-to-door salesmen, and some of them are gracious, and well, there's a small number of them that are not so gracious, you kind of, a lot of people are wary of that, but once you're able to kind of disarm them, and they'll say, hey, you don't need to buy anything. Once you do that, and then they can just listen and then just see where it's for them. It may not even happen this instance. It could be a week or 2 weeks or months later. They'll come back around because they know that they're not going to get that pressure, and they might just have a question, and that might be the little droplet that that opens the floodgates.
The other achieving status is I don't have as many lady customers as I'd like. I'd love to make a lot more hats for women, because the parameters are so much wider in terms of the color palette and the style and the contrast between the felt color and the ribbon. Like the whole world is so much bigger. But I do have a few, and I have one woman, I think she's bought 6 or 7 hats from me. Professional woman, dresses very well and never leaves the house without a hat on her head, and she always gets compliments on her hats. And so people say, oh, where do you buy your hats? And her response is, I have a guy. So it's like, for the first time in my life, I have this status. It's like, I'm a guy.
That's right. That's like it's a New York thing. It's like, I know a guy. I love it.
That's probably the best we can get, really, as an accolade, isn't it? I mean, it's lovely when people come out with those stories. Yesterday I went and delivered 2 hats to a friend who's got terminal cancer, and him and his wife, just to sort of help with. And I'm doing a charity event next Monday evening, where I'm donating a custom hat, and they're gonna auction it off. But it was really emotional to see how they it made their day, basically, and how it really made a difference. And you think, gosh, it's a hat, you know, and to us, that's what it is. It's a hat. But to some people, it's something that they'd aspired to all their life, but didn't. This couple didn't know where to go to find it. We're very, you know, very professional people in high-powered jobs, well paid, and then all of a sudden this came along, you know, and it's just terrible. But anyway, you know, the story I wanted to tell was that I saw a smile on both their faces. They smiled an awful lot anyway, but you know, it made a difference. And so I think that we do in the hatting community. We do make a difference to some people, but we don't always get to know it.
Correct. Wow, man.
And that's why it's for me, it's so important to have at least some clientele here, so I actually get to work with them face to face rather than because the craft of hatting it's a solitary enterprise, you know, other than lunch with my wife or, you know, taking the day off. It's like, you know, or moments like this. It's like,
I'm with you. I mean, I'm being told off because I'm spending too much time. I've got a hat. Here's one for you, Robert. I get a call yesterday. Oh, just had a death in the family. We've got the funeral on Friday. Can you make me a dark blue 5.5 centimeter brim, size 62.5? You know, I was like, I can, but hang on, I think I've got about 8 or 12 custom hats to build at the moment, and you know, but he's bought before from me, and I'll make it happen. But you know, So you end up working until I should be working probably till about 10 or 11 o'clock tonight. What time is it? It's 7 o'clock now. I'll go and break and have some food.
Yeah, that's the one reason I've thought about it, and I've always managed to talk myself out of it, and that's pursuing the wedding market. You know, or the, you know, down the States, it's fairly big business for both men and women. Is to the groom buys custom hats for all his groomsmen or with the bridesmaids, and it's like, you know, I don't want to. At this point, it's like, I'm not going there.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation yesterday about Western hats being bought as wedding hats, and you know, would I be prepared to do it? And what was interesting is that what they wanted, they saw my logo embossing on the inside of the leather sweatband. I said, yes, I've got all the equipment to do that. And they said, great, because what we want their names put on there and the date of their wedding on all of the hats. And I thought, okay, I hadn't really thought about that, but it does make some sense. So so that might be something that comes my way. But they said, look, they'll give you 6 months notice to make them, you know, and money won't be an issue. And I thought, okay, well, you know, you've got to look at these things, haven't you? I just don't know where the market's going to take me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's the one thing about the wedding market is I was the wedding coordinator at our church for a couple of years, and it's like learning that pricing for the wedding market is it has no relationship to reality. It's a whole universe unto itself, and it's like,
goodness me.
Wow.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not going to take advantage of it, but I'll give them a good value, because I'm sure it will take up time just talking to the people, because they'll want to talk about how they met and who's coming to the wedding, and you know, would you be prepared to make other hats for our bridesmaids, our groom, our page boys, our relatives? And before you know where you are, you had this whole story. Yeah, you don't really know whether you're going to get any more work out of it or not, but it's the time that you have to put in, I guess.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just want to make sure I don't cut off the conversation prematurely. I just want to make sure, like, this is always one of those things where I'm like, I always try to find that point, because, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, that leave them wanting more. But I want to make sure, it's like, Robert, it sounds like you might want to opine a little bit more here.
I don't know. I was just thinking about it. I think it's probably come to a natural. I can always come up with stuff to talk about, but I think it's maybe come to its natural ending.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Man, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. You know, this was a fabulous discussion. I'm gonna have to. I believe this is another topic that Nathan contributed. Hopefully, I got that right. But what a great what a great topic, and keep those guys coming. Like you guys that are watching at home, shout out to Jedi who was in the chat room. If you guys have ideas, definitely shoot them out. I'll try to put them on the calendar. I think there's a couple ideas that I think Paul has already suggested. I have to make sure that they're on the calendar. And you know, I want to thank both Robert and Paul for joining me, as well as Nathan on screen. And I'm going to say, just keep supporting these gentlemen. Robert's on Instagram and Facebook. Paul is on Facebook, Instagram. He's got his YouTube channel. So shout out to that channel. A lot of great content coming out of that. Keep supporting Paul and buy some of these gentlemen, some of their fine hats. You can reach out to them. And if you need their contact info, I'll get you that contact info. And
I'm going to mention that I'm still writing my monthly columns in Hat Talk magazine.
Yeah.
And each month there's an article on an aspect of making hats. So
love it.
The magazine has just changed hands, and so I had a Zoom call with the new owner, and my contract expired at the same time as the handover. And
yeah.
But I've got another 12-month contract, so I've got.
All right.
I just have to keep coming up with topics to write about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, Robert, keep doing. That's a great labor of love that you're doing, and you know, anytime somebody writes, I have to applaud that, because writing just seems to be one of those like lost arts. So shout out to you for writing some hat articles. I've seen some of the content that you've shared, and it's fascinating that is something that you managed to kind of incorporate into your I guess your repertoire. You know, and we need more folks like you doing that stuff.
I'm a failed novelist, so this gets my it kind of I still get to write.
Gotcha. I love it. Love
but
it.
I don't have to worry about plots and character development and all.
Yeah. I think we got some character here, so I love it. Well, thank you, gentlemen, again for joining us. And I'm going to say support the channel. And you know how it always goes. Even if you don't support these gentlemen and you don't support the channel, the one thing you got to do, and it's non-negotiable, and we won't get anybody after you, but it's non-negotiable, that is you got to stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody.
Ciao. Enjoy Puerto Rico.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Bye.
Hey, Paul.